How's it going? And welcome to episode 121 of On the Wire, a proud member of the Pitcherless Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at OnTheWirePod. You can follow me at Jake Crumpler, and you can follow my co-host Rick Graham at I Am Rick Graham. It may sound a little different. I'm actually not Adam Howe today. We're taking over for Adam. This is a podcast takeover. You got the In the Pen boys covering for Adam because of a scheduling conflict. So we've got you covered this week with all of your FAAB and waiver wire moves and all of the things you need to know about closers, etc. for this week. But here we are. Rick, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. You know, it's the 4th of July weekend. Always, you know, that always kind of, you know, coexists with like baseball and just, you know, so it's pretty relaxing weekend for me. Just get to, you know, nothing crazy planned. Just get to watch a lot of baseball, hopefully.
Nice. It definitely feels like the 4th of July weekend because it's like 90 degrees in my room right now. I've got my shirt off. I'm sweating, but you know, we're going to power through because talking about baseball can cure anything.
For sure. For sure.
All right. Well, we can just jump right into it. As always, Adam likes to start these with the news and notes, and we're going to follow the same path through the podcast here as well. We're just going to go through the notable promotions and IL placements and options and reactivations and discuss how they affect FAAB heading into this weekend, heading into Sunday, and how they affect playing time going forward. We'll start off with the big one. This guy is likely to garner the most FAAB thrown his way, and that's Jordan Westburg, who was promoted by the Baltimore Orioles. He is one of the team's top prospects. I think he's number 3 on MLB Pipeline. He's definitely top 5, and he's been killing it in the minor leagues. And recently, he's been playing basically every day since he got called up. It's been about 4 or 5 days since he got recalled, and he seems to be like he's going to be one of the biggest contributors in that infield in Baltimore. How are you feeling about Jordan Westburg, and what kind of FAAB money do you think you're going to be throwing at him?
Yeah, I mean, so far I like a lot of what I've seen, and you know, he was kind of a prospect that didn't originally stick out. He's not a top. He was, you know, a borderline top 100 prospect in a lot of places, but the power has really grown over the past 2 seasons. You know, 18 home runs this year in just 67 games at AAA. Had 18 home runs in 91 games at AAA last season. And that was, so, you know, you're going to get some power with him. And the other thing that I love is he does have a pretty good eye. He's got a decent walk rate, doesn't strike out a ton. I think he's going to fit right in. It's a good lineup he's joining. And it looks like he's going to have full-time, you know, pretty much full reign at third base for them for the time being. He might move around a little bit, but they're fine with Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, and they should be. He can play there. He can stick there. So it hurts Jorge Mateo's stock for sure, but the arrow's definitely pointing up for Westburg. It's probably the best infielder you're going to have a chance to get this Sunday for waiver purposes.
Oh, definitely. By far. He is the number 32 prospect according to MLB Pipeline. And while that takes into account fielding, so you can probably push him up a little further, especially considering, you know, the other guys that are going to be called up the rest of the season. It looks like it's going to push Jorge Mateo and Ramon Urias out of playing time. Urias was already in more of a utility role, so I expect him to see even less playing time there. And Mateo was seeing a lot of time at shortstop, and so with Henderson moving from the hot corner to the 6 hole and Westburg taking over at third and second, I think we're going to see less playing time from those two. Do you think either of those guys are still rosterable? I don't think Urias was rostered in too many leagues, but Mateo with his big speed and his hot start to the season, I don't know. For me, he feels like a drop.
I think it depends on the league size, and I think if you're in a deep 15-teamer or 16-teamer, I think I might just, you know, it depends on what's on the wire, but you know, speed's just hard to find. So you have a guy like that, he's kind of a unicorn when it comes to steals. There's not a lot of, you know, guys of his mold still around. So it depends on what you're dropping, but he already has 21 steals, and you know, that's just an injury away from him getting playing time again. So, I think it just depends on if you're dropping him for Westburg, sure, but you know, if you do have a deep bench to kind of hold on and see what happens, I don't hate hanging on to those steals.
Yeah, so 6 homers and 21 steals right now for Mateo, but since the start of May, he's got 0 home runs and just 2 steals. He's batting 155, striking out 27% of the time. It seems like he's gotten the bat completely knocked out of his hands, and he hasn't been able to make up for it on the bases either. So, I mean, I think he was a drop even before that. But considering that this is a really streaky player because of the swing and miss, like you said, just an injury away from rejoining that lineup. Definitely interesting. I think maybe 15 teams and deeper are the only ones where I'm considering. 12 teamers, I think he's sent him straight to the wire.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
Cool. All right, we can move over to Los Angeles, a team that has been super active on the trade market. I'm sure Adam covered the Eduardo Escobar trade last week, but the team also acquired Mike Moustakas from the Rockies. In corresponding moves, Jared Walsh was optioned to the minors, but the team also recalled David Fletcher and activated Anthony Rendon from the 10-day IL. He had missed just over the minimum there, but it seems like a little bit of a reshuffling in Anaheim right now, mostly in the infield, but there seems to be a lot of sort of changing there, with Moustakas seeing a lot of time at first base prior to Rendon's return, and Brandon Drury sort of moving around from second to first base and around, and Mickey Moniak seeing more time there, and Hunter Renfroe even seeing additional time at first base. Yeah, right. So it's like there's tons of changes there, and it's hard to sort of suss out who's going to be the biggest gainer in terms of fantasy value. I mean, we can start off with just Escobar and Moustakas. Are those guys that you're going to be eyeing because they were more sort of borderline fantasy viable guys in their old stomping grounds?
Not at the moment. I don't think. I wasn't exactly interested in either of them before this or entering the year. Even when it looked like Escobar was going to be the starting, third baseman for the Mets to start the year, it didn't really. And even Moustakas going to Colorado, not a ton of upside there with these two guys. I think they're probably going to be. I don't see either one becoming. I mean, the thing is, Anthony Rendon cannot stay healthy, so I'm sure there's going to be a point where Escobar does get full-time at bats, but for now I think I'm leaving them on the wire.
Yeah, so I sort of agree. I think Moustakas has been a little bit unlucky, but it's really hard to buy into him having success. It's been a while since we've seen anything from him, and Eduardo Escobar is sort of in a utility role there with Rendon back in the mix. But do the other guys, David Fletcher, does he move your needle at all? I think he's pretty solid in points leagues, but it's pretty empty batting average.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like you said, he's got a little value in points league, doesn't strike out a ton, but there's really nothing else. There's no power. There's not really any stolen base threat there. So I would just be honestly, I'm a little bit intrigued when Zach Neto comes back. I think he should be back somewhat soon. So yeah, if I'm looking for a middle infielder there, I'd wait for him to return.
Yeah. I think the biggest impact we see is on Mickey Moniak, who has been sort of the team's fourth outfielder because they have Renfroe and Ward and Trout out there, with Ohtani getting every day at bats at DH. So Moniak was sort of trying to get his way into the lineup as often as possible. And with Renfroe moving to first, that sort of opens a lot of playing time for Moniak in the outfield, at least versus right-handed hitters. And he's been pretty legendary since being recalled. Don't forget, he is a former number 1 overall pick, and he's been leading off when he does play, and that's ahead of Mike Trout, Ohtani, Rendon, Drury. That's a pretty great lineup behind him. So the runs could be off the charts. He's already got 8 homers, a pair of steals, and he's batting .318 with a 174 WRC plus, but the plate discipline is pretty awful. 0.09 walk to strikeout rate. Is this guy, if he hasn't already been picked up in your league, is this somebody that you'll be dropping like 5% of FAAB on?
5% maybe. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of intrigue there, especially, he kind of came up, lit the world on fire, and then he got a little quiet for a while, but he's been, let's see, this week, I mean, he's been hitting leadoff four times in the past week. So, in deeper leagues, or definitely AL only, he's a great, target right now. But there's a little intrigue, but yeah, you're right. The strikeout rate, I mean, there's going to be some there's going to be some slumps. There's going to be some bad regression here, but there's a little bit of power mixed with a little bit of speed. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of intriguing, but 5% is probably the most I would go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's much different than when he was first being called up with the Phillies. I mean, he really was not great with the bat. And while, like you said, he's striking out 31% of the time, walking less than 3% of the time, and he's got a 400 BABIP, he does have a 16% barrel rate, which is very, very good, which sort of helps you buy into that power. So while he's probably more of like a 260, 250 natural hitter based on how much he strikes out, the power, I think, is legit. And I think that's something that you can buy into with just a smidge of speed there. So definitely super interesting. And I think what puts me over the edge is like a guy I'll be targeting in a lot of 15 teamers is the fact that he's leading off for this really great lineup. And so the runs are going to be off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, hitting in front of Trout and Ohtani is always a plus. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy. If the Angels are playing five right-handed, facing 5 right-handed starters in a week, you probably want him in your lineup. And again, it's like, the numbers right now look good, but the walk rates, the walk and strikeout rates are definitely a little concerning. But there is some intrigue here with the new kind of power he's been able to tap into.
Yeah, well, from one LA team to another, we'll go to the Dodgers as they placed Chris Taylor on the IL with right knee soreness and activated Max Muncy from the IL after dealing with a strained left hamstring. Michael Busch was optioned in a corresponding move. And while both of those guys were likely either not rostered in most of the leagues in Chris Taylor's case and rostered in most teams with Max Muncy, probably on everybody's IL, I think this sort of does change how the rest of that team fares there. Chris Taylor going on the IL sort of opened up more playing time in the corner outfield, at third base, at second base. But then Max Muncy sort of comes back and takes all that third base playing time away, though he has sort of been platooning since he's been coming back. So there's lots of intrigue sort of around Miguel Vargas, who had a lot of hype prior to the season, and some other guys who have been coming up and seeing some more playing time, like Yanni Hernandez and Johnny DeLuca, and Jason Hayward has even been in the lineup a lot more. Is there anybody on the Dodgers that has piqued your interest with these moves, or is there anybody sort of dropping down your power rankings in terms of, Max Muncy, platooning and that kind of stuff?
Not really. I think this is just kind of what this is just something we should expect from the Dodgers is kind of, Muncy should not be in a platoon role. I know he's just coming off the IL and they're probably trying to be safe with him. And his defense has been pretty terrible at third base, but Muncy's the guy they should have in the lineup every day. It's been disappointing for Miguel Vargas this year, and at least he's still seeing some semi-regular at-bats. But with Mookie Betts now, with them feeling free to play Betts all around the infield as well as in right field still, it's
shortstop and second base.
Yeah, it kind of hurts Vargas and a guy like Chris Taylor's value before he got hurt. Michael Busch is someone I've been really interested in, and he didn't really get it going in both his stints so far when Muncy was on the IL, but definitely a name to still keep an eye on for like August and September. I don't think Chris Taylor's he's not going to help you with batting average at all, but there's still a little speed and a little pop there in deeper leagues if you're desperate for that sort of thing. So but when he comes back, it's going to really, there's going to be a lot of platooning going on, and it's going to hurt. It's going to bring down a lot of value for some of those outfielders, as well as Muncy. It's probably going to hurt too.
Yeah, I feel like David Peralta is the most likely one to see less playing time, because Jason Hayward has actually been really interesting this year. Really, it might be too strong of a word there, but he's actually shown power that we haven't seen from him in forever. He's already up to 8 home runs. Last time we saw him hit more than 10 was back in 2019. And if you can want to cross that year off the list because it was the juice ball year, you got to go back to 2017 when he hit just 11 home runs. He's already at 8 right now. And he's showing a lot better power with the highest barrel rate we've seen since StatCast was introduced and the highest hard hit rate we've seen from him since StatCast was introduced. And I think it's because they've got him him pulling a lot of fly balls, which fly balls were hard for him to get. And he's gone from having a fly ball rate since 2010. I mean, he's got the highest fly ball rate of his career. And coming into this year, it was like 32% for his career. Yeah. He's got it up to 45%, which is wild. And he's also pulling the ball 48% of the time, which he didn't have much trouble with pulling the ball recently. But once you start getting it in the air, you can really outperform StatCast metrics. So that's why he's really outperforming his expected average and expected slug. So that's a guy that I think definitely in NL only leagues, I think should be considered, but even some 15 teamers where you got 5 outfielders and it's sort of getting a little rough, then Hayward might be an option there, especially with the extra playing time with Taylor on the IL.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, Hayward is someone when we were kind of prepping for the show, someone who he's starting to be on that. Like, I think he should be rostered and played. And, we talk about, matchups, as long as the Dodgers are seeing 5 right-handed starters in a week, you're going to get 5 starts from Hayward, and he's been swinging the bat well. So I think that's an interesting name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and we can stay in Los Angeles because Daniel Hudson was activated from the 60-day IL. It's been a while since we've seen him. I think he got surgery before the season started. Left knee surgery is what it was. Yeah, okay. That's awful. But he's come back strong, and he's back on the Dodgers. And this is somebody that we've talked about on In the Pen quite often as, the guy that could usurp Evan Phillips when he does return. Is this somebody you're going to be dropping FAAB on in any leagues? Like, even if it's just 1 or 2% as just one of those dart throws?
About a week or so ago, I definitely was, and then Evan Phillips just kind of went on a save streak all out of nowhere, seemingly. So that kind of dampers my expectations a little bit. But yeah, Hudson came back. He looked pretty good in his first outing. And it's not like we're talking about a guy coming back from Tommy John. He came back. A knee injury is still pretty bad, especially for someone his age, but I think there's still something left in the tank for him. The velo is a little bit down in his first outing, but that's, it's one outing. I think we can, let's see where he's at next week. But I think I would throw some speculative dollars on him in deeper leagues where I need saves, but I'm not breaking the bank for him. Not now.
Good call. All right, we can move to Atlanta, where we've got some reshuffling of the rotation there. We've seen a lot of shuffling throughout the year, guys going up, guys going down, prospects making their debuts, and recovery projects sort of making their ways back. And that's sort of what we saw this week as AJ Smith-Shawver and Jared Schuster were optioned to the minors, while Michael Soroka and Colby Allard were recalled. Shawver was looking like he was rising super quickly through the minors, only 20 years old, but he had some pretty terrible peripherals in Atlanta, while Schuster has sort of been up and down throughout the year. Not great, but Soroka came back. He was very solid in his first outing back. I think he had 7 strikeouts in 6 innings, and Allard is set to make his debut. I don't know if he started already.
No, he debuted on, I believe it was Wednesday, and he actually looked really good.
8 strikeouts in 4 2/3.
Yeah, it's, the curveball was working for him. I still like Soroka over him if I'm taking a chance on either of these guys. But talking about if you're looking for wins on the wire, these are these two guys pitching for the best team in the NL. Definitely worth a shot if they can stick in that rotation. Which there's definitely spots up for grabs until we have. I mean, Max Fried's not going to be back until after the All-Star break, and I don't think.
Kyle Wright.
Yeah, I don't think Kyle Wright's going to return until August. So there's definitely rotation spots for these two guys, and I don't think it's going to cost you a ton, at least to get Allard. Soroka might cost a little more, but I'd still be tempted to throw close to 10% on Soroka because he did look really good the other day, and we've seen, what he's done when healthy in the past, and he was really lighting up AAA before he came up. It was well deserved. I think they kind of rushed him a little bit earlier in the year. Yeah, went back to AAA, got things right, and I think he might be ready to rock for the rest of the year in that rotation.
I agree. I think Soroka is super enticing in, honestly, like the majority of leagues, 12-teamers included. But I think he's more of like a points league specialist. He seems like he's like a Holly, which is like the the upscale Toby, where he's not going to strike out a lot of guys. He's more of an innings eater, ground ball type, but he does have that prospect pedigree. We've seen him be really good in the past. And the fact that he came back and struck out 7 guys in 6 innings shows that sometimes he does have the ability to add a couple more strikeouts there. So that's somebody that I'm really interested in adding in the majority of leagues. And then for Allard, like you said, that curveball was really good in his return. He went fastball, curveball, cutter there, and each pitch had a CSW well over 30%. The 4-seamer and the curveball were well over 40%. So that's pretty interesting to see if that can have a lot of sense or have a lot of success moving forward. But yeah, that'll be definitely interesting to watch. He had like a strained oblique for the first couple of months, and then I think had 2 starts in the minors and then was quickly back up in the majors. So if he can continue to show the strikeout potential, that's a guy that's going to be a super sneaky ad if you make that move now, and then he actually has success going forward. The Braves are set to take on the Guardians at the beginning of next week, and that's who Colby Allard's going to see next. Not the scariest of matchups, but it could be there.
Yeah, I mean, I know myself, I will need to I'm going to be throwing a lot of money on Allard just in my NL only Tout Wars team because my pitching staff is decimated at the moment. So he's definitely someone in the 15, 16 teamers or NL only leagues where you're going to want to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll go to the Mountains of Colorado, and we'll talk about CJ Cron and Chris Brandt, who both returned from the 10-day IL for different reasons. Cron with back spasms, Brandt with a bruised left heel. Both of them had actually been out for a while, so this will be a huge influx of offense to that Rockies lineup. And it sort of doesn't change too much, but it does change a little, I think mostly for Nolan Jones, who was seeing a lot of time in the corner outfields where Bryant is going to slot in, and then that sort of forces him into a DH role where Bryant is probably also going to see some time, and so will CJ Cron. And while Nolan Jones has been really good, the Rockies are known for playing games with their young players. Nolan Jones still 25, but he's been one of their best hitters thus far, batting .315 with a 137 WRC plus. Are you worried about Nolan Jones losing playing time there? And do you think that will affect his value in fantasy?
Oh, for sure. It's the Rockies. It looks like he might be in some sort of platoon with Randall Grichuk moving forward. But then again, this team, I think last year I know we talked about, there was some pieces that the Rockies could move at the deadline last year, and then they did nothing. Will they do that again? Are they going to do that again? Because there are pieces. I mean, like you said, CJ Cron, the guy you mentioned, on the last year of his deal, they could move Grichuk. I mean, they could open up some playing time for some young guys to see how they fare. But for now, it looks like Jones is going to be in a platoon role, and I guess if there's, again, it's like if they have home games that week and they're going up against right-handed pitchers, then he definitely is a nice play. But I think you might be able to drop him in some shallower leagues for interesting pieces right now.
Yeah, he's definitely like a guy you'll want to stream often if he's playing in Coors versus a righty. But I definitely like 10-teamers, I think, is like the shallowest I would do like an immediate drop. I think I'd still hold in 12-teamers, especially in like daily leagues where you can switch him out when he's not playing. But like weekly 12-teamers, it gets a little iffy if he's playing outside of Coors like this upcoming week and sees a lot of lefties, which we're unsure about right now. But yeah, that's pretty unfortunate for a guy that was looking like he was finally getting his opportunity in the majors and taking advantage of it. But we can move on to another couple of activations, and that's Jazz Chisholm Jr. for the Marlins, being activated from the 10-day IL after being out for a month with a sprained right big toe, and Gene Segura coming back from a strained left hamstring. I mean, we can start off with Segura. I am not interested there. He was like the worst qualified hitter in baseball by like 15% before hitting the IL, so he was already not doing well. But Jazz Chisholm Jr. is definitely somebody you want to activate and insert right back into your lineup as soon as possible. And I think the Marlins weren't really running with anybody super fantasy relevant in
Garrett Hampson.
Garrett Hampson, John Birdie was probably seeing more time.
No one really that I doubt you were rostering that you're going to want to release now. But yeah, I mean, Segura definitely not someone I've had interest in like 3 or 4 years at this point. So just because he's back, don't that doesn't really mean that he's fantasy worthy at the moment.
Yeah. The thing is, since he's come back, he's played 3 games and he's gone 4 for 13, which is a 308 average. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be some regression there to the mean. So positive regression is he's got a 230 BABIP and the expected average is like 43 points above his current 197 average. But it's pretty empty average. He doesn't steal like he once did. He used to steal 40 bases back in 2013. I don't think he's going to be super fantasy relevant, but there is the possibility that he goes on like a mini hot streak, steals a couple of bases, bats like over 300 for a couple of weeks or something. And that can be useful in deep leagues. It's just not something that you want to, I don't know, pin a lot of FAAB on because of the uncertainty there and how bad he's been thus far.
Yeah, I would say, only pretty much NL only for Segura, because he's not gonna ruin your batting average. He's a pretty steady floor batting average, but I don't think there's anything else he's going to bring to the table. He doesn't run anymore, and there's no power there.
Yep. Well, in Arizona, Merrill Kelly was placed on the 15-day IL with right calf inflammation, and Brandon Pfaadt was recalled, but he was like immediately optioned after a terrible start. So the Diamondbacks are still running with a 4-man rotation right now. And on the offensive end, Dominic Fletcher and Kyle Lewis were recalled while Pavin Smith was optioned. So a lot of shuffling there, but I don't think there's too much actionable in terms of FAAB or fantasy.
I think, Fletcher's just pretty much up for now, just as Corbin Carroll insurance, because he's dealing with an injury that hopefully doesn't put him on the IL. And then Lewis is just, he's going to be in a platoon with the other left-handed outfielders they have there, either Alec Thomas or Jake McCarthy. So, nothing actionable there. I do think it's interesting what's going on at third base there. Looks like Evan Longoria is now. I mean, they started with Josh Rojas, then Emmanuel Rivera, and now it looks like Evan Longoria might be the guy that they roll with most days, and kind of musical chairs at third base. But I've always kind of liked Emmanuel Rivera. I hope he can kind of get back and take over that job again. But Longoria has been swinging the bat well lately, so I guess it makes sense for them to roll with him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, don't get fooled by Dominic Fletcher's numbers. They were good in his previous call-up and in the minors, but he's only going to have playing time temporarily, at least until one of the other outfielders there gets injured or falls off offensively, but not too much actionable there. It will be interesting to see who they plug into the rotation the next time through.
I mean, Dre Jameson threw 44 pitches in that outing that Fat started. I wonder if they let him go 60 pitches and start that game, maybe.
Interesting. That's
kind of the only outside of I don't know who else they could call up, but I feel like maybe they just go with Jameson in a bullpen game, and because I think Kelly should be back after one more start or one more turn in the rotation.
Cool. Yeah. So nothing too actionable there. So we can move to one that actually might be a little more actionable. I actually picked up one of these guys in one of my leagues recently. Matt Manning was activated from the 60-day IL after he was dealing with a fractured toe and right foot. And Eduardo Rodriguez is set to be activated to start on Wednesday versus the A's. He was out with a left index finger pulley rupture, which sounds awful, especially for a pitcher. But Eduardo Rodriguez was actually available in a couple of leagues. I had him available in a 15-teamer for multiple weeks. I picked him up last weekend, and I just picked him up in a 12-teamer this weekend. And Matt Manning has been up and down in terms of how we see him in fantasy. I think he had a stretch last year where he looked really good, and I guess the whole year, 3.43 ERA. But I mean, super up and down because of the lack of strikeouts there. But he returned on the 27th and tossed 5.2 innings of two-run ball, but he had a 4-4 strikeout to walk ratio. Is he somebody you're interested in? Is Eduardo Rodriguez a must pick up in every league?
Manning's always been intriguing to me. I think Manning is a deeper league option. I think Eduardo is a guy that you probably want to at least throw some speculative, dollars out. You don't want him to go for $1 or $2 on the wire, because he was looking really good before his injury. Manning's probably more of a deep league ad. I think we also forgot to mention Tarek Skubal back on Tuesday. He starts on Tuesday against Oakland. He actually starts 2 games next week against Oakland and then Toronto. And I think that might be the most interesting option in this rotation. I know you mentioned we talked about him a little bit before the show. He's throwing harder now, and could be intrigue there for Skubal over the second half.
Yeah, that's a good call. He's definitely been my favorite of the like trio of prospect pitchers coming out of Detroit there. Him, Casey Mize, and Matt Manning. He's definitely had the most success last year, 3.52 ERA across 117 innings, 24% strikeout rate there. And if he comes back with better stuff and is sort of rejuvenated from taking it slow during the preseason because of the injury that he was dealing with, that could be somebody that's pretty interesting. The home ballpark there is really nice. He won't have a lot of run support, but that definitely somebody that interests me more in more so than Matt Manning. I think I would still get Eduardo Rodriguez over him, given that we've seen what he can do. And that was somebody that I was interested in last year when he sort of struggled for a bunch of different reasons. But yeah, I think definitely some options there, especially for FAAB. Tarik Skubal is going to be somebody that is going to be available in probably every league. He may not even be eligible until he starts in NFBC leagues.
That's a good question. I would have to check that. I'm not sure on that one. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can go to another pitcher that was recalled recently, and that was David Peterson. He was a guy that had a lot of hype in the offseason because he had shown success in previous spot starts and the like with the Mets, but he came up and sort of disappointed everyone this year, mostly because he changed his slider for a reason I still can't quite understand. That was like such a great pitch, and then he changed it, and it was an awful pitch. And so I don't know why he did that. And he struggled throughout the first couple of months of the season, month and a half. He had an 8 ERA through his first 8 starts, and it did come with a 3.43 xFIP, but you can sort of pin it on that terrible slider. But he came back recently on the 27th and tossed 6 scoreless innings with 5 strikeouts. Is this somebody you're going to be throwing 3% on or more?
Yeah, I think so. The Mets definitely need some help at the back end of that rotation right now. I think he could stick. He's had some bad luck. 3.92 BABIP on the year in his 9 starts. And I like the swing and the swing and miss stuff still there. He's 50 strikeouts over 45 innings. I think he could be a very useful second half starter, and I would definitely add speculate on him. He's starting on Sunday, so he's starting today. When this podcast comes out against the Giants, kind of you can see how that one goes, and then make a decision later tonight. But definitely intriguing arm, especially at this point of the year, and for a team that as bad as they've been, I mean, there's more win viability there than in a lot of other, Oakland or Detroit, other teams like that have some interesting names on the wire.
Yeah. Well, we can keep this next one short. We've got Logan Allen being optioned in favor of Cal Quantrill being activated from the 15-day IL after dealing with right shoulder inflammation. I don't know. Quantrill sort of found success the past couple of years with smoke and mirrors. He had a very good ERA with terrible peripherals. Doesn't strike anybody out, and he's been terrible this year, coming off an injury. His return saw him allow 6 runs in 3 1/3 innings. I can't imagine myself throwing any money on him. Can you?
Probably not. There's just no upside really in it, and there's not a lot of swing and miss here. Logan Allen, I know he's struggled lately, but I still wonder if he's a better option than Cal Quantrill.
To hold on to him?
Just no, for the Guardians as in the rotation. I think looking at the rotation right now, he's probably the first man. I know they might option Gavin Williams but
they sent Allen down, so
I'm just when I know it's going to be a while for Tristan McKenzie to return, but
okay,
once there becomes or if they I don't know. I wouldn't spend anything on Quantrill and AL only, maybe a couple bucks, but that's it.
Yeah. This next one is pretty interesting because it's sort of 2 guys switching spots. We got Luis Urias going to the minors in deference to Bryce Terang, who got off to a hot start this season. Didn't he have a walk-off grand slam or something super early in the season. And that was like his big calling card. And then sort of went down from there. But that was a guy I was interested in preseason. I got him in a couple places. This is his debut season. He's only 23. He had a trio of home runs and 9 steals prior to going to the minors. And in the minors, he did pretty well. He batted .298, hit 3 more home runs, stole 2 bases, 127 WRC plus. So he definitely got his bat going again. And I think he's going to be playing second base the majority of the time, at least being on the strong side of a platoon there. Is that somebody you're going to be interested in throwing a couple of bucks on? Because I don't think he's going to be too expensive in most leagues.
Yeah, maybe in deeper leagues. I mean, this roster, this whole offense has been really disappointing. And it's frustrating because there's like names here that I want to succeed, and I want, you're like Urias. I was big on, and it's
for like 3 years.
I know he's been struggling, but when I saw that he was optioned, I'm like, even like how did like in this offense, he's the guy that gets optioned, but sure. Andrew Monasterio's still up. But yeah, I guess I want him to work on some things. He missed half the year already, so. Terang, sure. Deeper leagues, throw a couple bucks on him because there are some. I don't think he's ever going to be like a huge power or speed guy, but he mixes in a little bit of both, and he should be able to hit for a high enough average where he can stick around at some point. Maybe this being his second, his second time called up. Maybe this is it. So interesting, but again, not someone I'm breaking the bank for in shallow leagues.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can wrap things up with just a couple more. I think this one's going to be pretty quick as well. Alejandro Kirk was activated from the 10-day IL. He missed a couple weeks with a left hand laceration. It seems like he's going to be on the short side of a platoon at DH while playing backup catcher for Danny Jansen in Toronto. Not too great. He's more of a points league play because he doesn't strike out, and the rest of his game has not been there this year. I think he's probably an option that you want to consider in the majority of two catcher 15 team leagues, but outside of that, I'm not too interested.
Yeah, he's a name I've been looking at in a couple of leagues that are 2 catcher leagues that are 15 team leagues that he was sent to the wire, and interesting as a second catcher option because I know he's really struggled this year, but he's still the catcher position is what the catcher position is. There's not a lot of hope and upside there for the most part. So I think he still makes sense as a second catcher in those types of leagues. But in one catcher leagues, I don't think you're looking at him at all.
Mm-hmm. We had another trade that's not really fantasy relevant, but Aroldis Chapman was sent to Texas in exchange for Cole Reagans, and I think it was Ronny Cabrera, who's like a 17-year-old outfielder, so he's not going to be fantasy valuable, but Reagan's probably not either. But does Aroldis Chapman sort of figure into that closer role at all, do you think?
Well, I still, I might throw a couple dollars on him speculatively. I think it's a slightly better situation. Obviously, there's more saves to be had in Texas, but Will Smith has been pitching really well. There's no reason to remove him from the role right now. That being said, I'm not sure how, we talked about it on, in the Pen podcast about, I'm not sure how well he holds up over the second half of the year. I talked up Josh Spores, but now I think Chapman is the second guy, the next in line there, and someone who maybe by August is in the closer role. We'll see. I mean, it's just not something I want to get too excited about right now, but I do see a lot of people adding him in leagues right now. I think he was one of the most added players in Yahoo over the past couple of days.
Yeah, that trio in Texas is looking pretty deadly with Sports, Chapman, and Smith. I think they're gonna do pretty well in the playoffs. But we can stick in the AL West with our second to last guy, and it's Jordan Diaz being recalled for the A's with Jonah Bride being optioned. Not sure this is too relevant, but Jordan Diaz did have a game this year where he hit a trio of home runs, and he has been like one of the team's top 10 prospects. And I think he's going to play at least like 50% of the time. He's played in each of his 2 games thus far at DH, but he can also play second and first base. More like an AL only play, but do you have any interest in 15 team leagues?
A little bit, actually. I do kind of like his profile as he's definitely a bat first guy. It looks like he's gonna DH a lot, which sure. I know there was always questions about where would he end up playing in the infield, and if they have an open DH spot, then get the bat in the lineup, and he should be able to help you out in a couple categories at least. That being said, again, it's not like it's not a must add in 12 teamers. It's probably not even a must add in 15 or 16 teamers. You're maybe a speculative add if you need some infield help, but interesting bat for sure. I think it's the A's. So what's going to happen? He's not going to help out a ton with runs or RBIs.
Yeah. Yep. Well, our last one, we've got an unfortunate one. Shane McClanahan was just today placed on the IL with back tightness. Probably just a 2-week stint there, so he'll miss 2 or 3 starts, and we'll be back shortly, probably after the All-Star break. But who do you think could take his spot in the rotation while he's gone? I know Luis Patino and Cooper Criswell are options that are on the 40-man roster right now, but the Rays are not scared to go with the full-on bullpen game.
Yeah, so what is he going to end up missing? So 2 starts, I think that either in the Rays, they might give Patino a shot, or they might just, have a couple bullpen games to get them through the All-Star break. But if Patino does get called up, definitely a little bit of interest there, given his prospect pedigree, and, we've seen some upside from him. It's just very hit or miss when he's on the mound, so... other than that, I don't think there's anyone really worth getting excited for here. Just hoping to get McClanahan back and healthy for the second half.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up our news and notes section for this episode. As always, I'm sure there's some things that we miss, especially because this is our first time leading the podcast. So to keep up with all the news, make sure you're listening to Nick's Plus Pitch podcast, where he talks about every starting pitcher performance from every single day. And I'd also give the First Pitch podcast a listen, led by Casey Bubba and myself, which breaks down the news, highlights, and observation from every day's worth of games, as well as looking forward to keep you ready for every single day of baseball. In just a moment, we're going to talk about some of the closers to target in FAAB this coming Sunday. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. All right, and we're back. Of course, you're listening to On the Wire. My name is Jake Crumpler, joined by Rick Graham, and we're going to do our focus topic. It's going to be a short one since we had a lot of news and notes to talk about, but our expertise is relievers. We do the In the Pen podcast every week. So we're going to do sort of a little preview of what you can see over at In the Pen. Usually we go a lot deeper, but we're going to give you a couple closers to target in FAAB this coming Sunday. I will just kick it right off with Liam Hendriks, who's rostered, I think, in around 60% of Yahoo leagues. So he's not super available, but I have seen him in some 15 teamers because he's been on the IL. He was cleared to start throwing on June 27th. So his return could be within the next week or two. And you may want to jump on him before the All-Star break, because afterwards, I think he's probably going to be the closer throughout the second half and could get traded to a contender. Is Liam Hendriks somebody that you're targeting in FAAB this Sunday?
Yeah, I think so. If he's still on the wire for whatever, I think even in leagues where there's no IL spot, I think this might be the time to buy in. Kendall Graveman hasn't pitched well, in his replacement. So not that he was any sort of threat to begin with, but he clearly isn't now. And then, like you said, there's a very good chance they'll at least, talk to him about, being traded to a contender, as that White Sox team is not going to make the playoffs probably. So, yeah, I think he's definitely, if 60% of leagues, if you're in one of those 40% of Yahoo leagues where he's available, I would consider, adding him this week.
Yeah, he's you could definitely get him cheap right now while before people start to realize, he's going to be coming back soon. And somebody else that's sort of in that same boat where you can get him cheap before he may be the full-time closer. This is going to be really early, and that's Carlos Hernandez for the Royals. We've already seen Aroldis Chapman go out, so Carlos Hernandez is already the top setup option in Kansas City, but Scott Barlow is also a top trade candidate right now. So if Barlow is traded, we're getting really close to trade season. It comes on you fast, phrasing. But after the All-Star break, we're going to see a lot of trades, and I think Barlow is going to be one of the top candidates there, and Hernandez could be a guy that quickly jumps into the closer role in Kansas City. Though they won't have too many wins, it's still a guy in very deep leagues that I'd be considering.
Yeah, this is good. This is a very good call out right here, because I know we talked about it a little bit in the pen, I don't know, about a month ago, when there was first kind of rumored that both guys were on the block. And it was looking like Taylor Clark might be the next guy in line. But I think Hernandez, I think Clark's kind of fallen out of the picture there. And Hernandez would be very, very interesting given his stuff and how it plays. So I don't know. You might be right. It might be a little too early, but Barlow could go next week. And then, you might miss out on Hernandez. So speculative add in 15, 16 teamers. Sure. I like it, throwing $1 or $2 on him this week.
Mm-hmm. So sort of in that same boat, we already talked about Aroldis Chapman, so I'm going to skip that one, and we're going to go straight to Shintaro Fujinami. This one might be the deepest pull of all, as not only are the A's somehow worse than the Kansas City Royals, just barely, but Shintaro Fujinami has not had the same success that Carlos Hernandez has, but Trevor May is the top option in Oakland right now. He's not really locked down that role. That's number one. And number two, he's also going to be on the trade block. And Shintaro Fujinami has some of the best stuff in baseball. He just can't control it. That is, until recently, his last 7 outings, he's tossed 8 1/3 innings, comes with a 3.24 ERA and a 1.32 WHIP, which is pretty solid, more so mediocre, but it comes with a 9-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Whereas prior to those last 7 outings, he tossed 34 innings of 11 ERA ball with a 34-29 strikeout to walk ratio. Absolutely terrible. So to see him limit the walks while still striking guys out and not allowing a lot of runs, maybe he's finally turning the corner in terms of honing his stuff and getting it in the zone. And he would be a really cool option to have in fantasy as the closer for the A's. But like right now, it's going to be like really deep leagues, like AL only, where you're going to be sort of speculating there.
Yeah, Fujinami or Ursig would be the fun options there. But there's also I know you're the resident A's guy on the staff. So what about like Sam Mole? He figured into a save earlier this week. Does Mole or Ursig either one of those kind of worry? Like, you think it would be Fujinami over those two?
I don't know if I specifically think it would be Fujinami. I just hope it would be.
Gotcha.
I think he's got really good stuff. Yeah, Ursig has been seeing more time in high leverage roles there, and he's been pretty solid this year. That's a guy who was transitioned from being a position player prospect to a reliever and was acquired by the A's from the Brewers earlier this year, I think in May. And Sam Mole has been one of the most solid relievers in Oakland the past couple of years, but he's got a 4.50 ERA. So that's sort of the level of solid we're talking about in Oakland. So I think it's sort of open for anybody there. I would love to see Shintaro Fujinami take that, and that would be really something to root for in the second half. But yeah, there's zero guarantees. Yeah,
Fujinami, I agree with. That's the fun one because his stuff is nasty. I mean, he has a whole arsenal of filthiness. So if he could, if the command can stick and he can, figure that out, then he's very, very interesting long-term play.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up this section of the podcast. We'll have some more saves recommendations later in the pod, but right now we're going to have a quick talk about Underdog Fantasy's 7th inning stretch, their second half best ball tournament. It's going to be pretty interesting because there's so many ways to win money there. You do a draft. I think it's a 12-team league, and then you win money based off how you perform through the rest of the year. You don't have to set your lineup, so you just do the draft, and then it's a best ball league. So Underdog chooses your best lineup throughout the year, and that's pretty fun. It definitely opens you up for a lot of different strategies, and I think we're going to talk about our strategy entering this tournament. It's only $7. You can sign up for the 7th inning stretch on Underdog Fantasy, and you use our code PitcherList, and that'll give you a 100% deposit match up to $100. And like I said, it's only $7 to enter. Our code is PITCHERLIST, all caps. But some of the guys we are looking at, we're going to do a pitcher and a hitter each, and we're sort of looking to take advantage of this points format where not only do you not get minus points for walks as a pitcher, but you don't get negative points for strikeouts as a hitter. So that was something we were going to look to take advantage of. I think we'll start on the pitching end. And one guy that I was really interested in is Kodai Senga, who big strikeout guy, but also a big walk guy, but he has been able to make it work. So while he does have a good ERA, the whip can get up there, but those walks aren't being accounted for. He's got a 3.53 ERA with a 28.5% strikeout rate, but he's walking 13% of batters. Not ideal for the majority of points leagues, but ones like the 7th inning stretch, you can get a lot of value there in your drafts because he's not going to go super early, but he's somebody that I think that is going to play above their talent level because of the scoring format.
Yeah, I do like Senga as a good second half potential, option. He's, like you said, the walks are a concern, but in this format, it doesn't really hurt you as much. It's not like you're counting whip. So, definitely a great best ball option, especially with the type of upside we've seen in some of his starts this year.
Yeah. And who do you got on the pitching end?
Yeah, I'll go with a similar kind of guy who has a bit of a walk problem, and that's Reed Detmers, who's been on fire in June. Maybe he's figured it out. Maybe we're finally seeing the Reed Detmers breakout. He had a 2.05 ERA and a .91 whip with 36 strikeouts over 30.2 innings in June. So if he can keep that going, the only thing that really concerned me like with him is the walk rate, but you don't get dinged for walks in this format. So, let's just rack up the strikeouts and hopefully quality starts for him in, going forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned 2.05 ERA through June. If you take out his first start of June, he's got a 1.05 ERA in his last 4 starts, and that comes with at least 8 strikeouts in every start in that stretch. So definitely a guy who's been on fire, and his ERA numbers aren't really reflecting how good he's been recently. And so I think that's a very good call. And now we can move to our hitter suggestions. And I'm going to go with Jack Sawinski. I mean, this is sort of an interesting one because I think he will go late in these drafts, but he is definitely a sneaky pull because this is a points leagues. We're counting the power, we're counting the walks, we're counting the hit by pitches. The scoring format doesn't necessarily count total bases, but we're counting doubles and triples and singles as well as home runs. And Sawinski not only has 16 home runs, but he's walking almost 16% of the time and has thrown in 7 stolen bases. So while he's not going to be getting a ton of hits, the 31% strikeout rate doesn't ding him at all. And so the power, the speed, and the plate discipline, that's going to earn him a lot of points in many different ways.
Yeah, that's a great call. I mean, for a best ball, I feel like he's a good fit because there is a lot of streakiness to him, but when he's hot, he's one of the best hitters against right-handed pitchers in baseball. He just can't really handle lefties yet, but against righties, he has, he's had great numbers the past 2 seasons. He's definitely someone who keeps getting slept on. I think next year he'll be a guy that's drafted in pretty much every league, but I think we're still at the point where he's a little bit slept on. And yeah, that's a great call. Someone you could probably get later on in drafts for, not a lot of not too much draft stock.
Yeah, and you mentioned his stats versus righties. Got all 16 of his home runs have come versus righties, and it comes with a 146 WRC plus, which is, that 46% better than league average. He's definitely one of the best hitters against right-handed pitchers. And now I'll leave the floor open for you to tell us about your hitter.
I'll go with another hot hitter right now, and that's Tommy Pham for the Mets, who's putting up some of his best StatCast numbers in his career at age 35 for the Mets. So he's kind of been the one, bright spot in what's been let's be honest, a dismal year for the Mets this year. But he's been on fire lately with his OPS is over 1,000 in his last 118 plate appearances going back to middle of May. He's finally, he's getting full, everyday playing time because he is one of the best, probably the best Mets hitter at the moment. So it's kind of, he doesn't run anymore. He doesn't really get a ton of steals, but he will walk. He does have, 10%
walk rate. He does have 9 steals though.
He does have, and he's got 4 steals in June. So, he'll do a little bit of everything for you. Strikes out a little bit, but again, strikeouts too much of a concern for hitters in this format.
Exactly. Yeah. And his 136 WRC plus right now is his career best since his 2017 breakout. So it's been fun to see him bounce back. Like you said, the StatCast numbers are off the charts. I had my brother go look at his page the other day because he was sort of wondering why he was on my fantasy team in our home league. And he pulled open his StatCast page and was like, "Oh, I see all the red lollipops. They're looking tasty." Yeah. So Tommy Pham, great call there. But you can sign up for the 7th inning stretch on Underdog Fantasy, and using our code PitcherList, all caps PITCHERLIST, you'll receive a 100% deposit match up to $100, and it's only $7 to enter. Just check the description of this episode for the sign up link, and make sure to use the promo code PitcherList when you sign up. You must be 18 years or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789. But before we talk about some player recommendations for this Sunday's FAAB run, we're going to take another quick break. All right, and we're back, and we're going to break down some of the best options for FAAB this coming weekend. We're going to break it down into different sections. So we've got power, we've got speed, we've got wins and strikeouts, ratios, saves, and we've got a wild card to throw in there at the very end. So we're going to each give a recommendation for each of these categories. We're looking for guys that are sort of rostered in less than a third of Yahoo leagues, just so that they're actually actionable. They're available in your leagues. So we're going to kick it off with power. So home runs and RBIs. My guy is Max Kepler, who's I've been interested in for quite a while. He's been a guy that I really like in points leagues because he walks a lot and he doesn't strike out too much while producing a lot of power. That hasn't been the case this year. He's sort of gone in the wrong direction in both of those categories, but that comes with some of the best or sort of biggest discrepancies between expected and actual performance in terms of StatCast. He's got an 11% barrel rate, which is the highest of his career, and he's underperforming both his expected batting average by 30 points and expected slug by almost 20 points, and that comes with a BABIP under 200, and he's already hit 11 home runs this year. So I think this is a guy that is starting to break out. We've seen the power come along recently. I think in his past like 2 weeks or so, 11 days, he's hit 4 home runs. So it seems to be coming around. Is Max Kepler somebody that you are also going to be targeting in fantasy leagues?
Maybe. I've always liked Max Kepler. The problem is there's always been a little bit of a contact rate issue. There's a lot of swing and miss there, but the power numbers, I think we've been waiting for the Max Kepler breakout for so long, and it's been so frustrating that it hasn't happened that I've kind of moved on from him a little bit. But I overall like the majority. I mean, he hits the ball hard. He does have, pretty good launch angle numbers. It's just, let's see what the playing time looks like. I think in deeper leagues, it's worth a shot in, your 15, 16 team deep, roto leagues. Sure. I would be interested in this over a lot of the other options, but in 12 teamers, I think I'm still a little bit, I'm going to shy away from him at the moment.
Yeah, he's more of a streamer versus right-handers in 12 team or deeper. And then in 15 team leagues, I think he's just a cheap option for power right now. He's 3% owned on Yahoo. And Rick, who do you have in terms of targets for power and home runs and RBI this week?
I'll go with Carlos Santana, only 11% owned on Yahoo. The name that I thought we weren't going to be interested in.
After that dance he did yesterday.
Well, that was awesome. That was awesome. He's such a fun radar. He's such a fun player, and I love seeing him. What he did in Seattle last year, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Seattle was, as good as they were last year, and now Pittsburgh's kind of overperforming. I think he's a great clubhouse guy, but he's also performing really well with an 876 OPS in June. That comes with 6 home runs and 19 RBIs. So there's still a little juice there. There's still a little pop. He's still the everyday cleanup guy for them. And that team does have a little bit of an offensive, they have McCutchen swinging the bat well. There's some, there's some offense there. We talked about we talked about Sawinski. So
Yep.
It's not like he's in a barren offense. He should have RBI opportunities. So he's hot right now. Is it gonna last? We'll see. But especially in if you're in points leagues, he's always been a good guy who gets a lot of walks, doesn't strike out a lot. Those numbers have kind of actually taken a little bit of a dip this year, but still above average. So if he's still hitting for power like he has been in June, then we'll take that. So I think Carlos Santana is a very intriguing power option, and especially the first base position hasn't been, it's been a little bit lackluster this year, I feel.
Yeah, and he's been a league winner for me in more than a few points leagues, and it's crazy that he's still kicking at the age of 37 and still being a difference maker in real baseball and fantasy baseball. It's a lot of fun to see. He's been one of my favorite players for a while. I'm going to let you take this one first as well. Because I know that we had the same choice here, but we got an extra option. But in terms of speed, guys that you think are going to be racking up these stolen bases and scoring runs, who are you targeting this week in FAAB?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. We both were looking for some speed options in deeper leagues, and we both came up with the same name pretty much at the same time. And it's Will Benson, and Will Benson is also, it's not just speed. I think he can help out with some other things as well. Yeah. He's definitely got some pop. He's 6'5", 230. He's a big guy, but he runs well. He has 89th percentile sprint speed, has 6 stolen bases in June, had 2 in the past week. He's starting in left field against right-handed pitching. Another one of those strong side platoon guys that you could play matchups with. And, Will Myers is gone now, so it's not that he was much of a threat to playing time to begin with, but I think Benson should be there in their starting, lineup for against right-handed hitters, moving forward. I don't think there's anyone else that can take over that role. And 11 stolen bases in 28 AAA games this year, so there could be room for more stolen bases if the Reds let him fly.
Yeah, he's super interesting, and he's a lot of fun too. We saw that walk-off home run he hit a couple weeks ago, and he was super fired up. This was a guy that I was pretty interested in prior to the season. During draft season, I think he was somebody that was going really under the radar and playing in Cincinnati, one of the best ballparks in baseball for hitters. Super interesting there, and he's got that power speed combo. 17 homers, 16 steals at AAA in 2022, and he doesn't strike out a lot, and he walks a ton, and so that gives him more opportunities on base to steal. So that helps you more in this speed category. So he's somebody that's super interesting. Small sample size notice, but he does have a 12% barrel rate as well. So the StatCast numbers are backing up the power there as well. So it's just 6% owned in Yahoo right now. Definitely a guy that's going to be available in a lot of leagues and somebody I'll be interested in. Forgot to say Santana's. He's at 11% right now. But we'll go to my speed option, and that's Maikel Garcia, sort of owned in more leagues than the other two guys because he got off to such a hot start when he got called up to the majors. He's 28% rostered, but the middle infielder and corner infielder for the Royals has actually been really good thus far, mostly in terms of speed. He's got 13 stolen bases. He is batting .271, but he's shown really good contact skills despite the lack of power. He does hit the ball hard. It's just on the ground a lot. And while that's fine because he's really fast, and I think he's going to continue to steal a lot of bases for the Royals, and he's getting a lot of playing time there as well. I think he's playing almost every day. Holy moly, they haven't batting cleanup. He's been batting cleanup and playing third base, shortstop, and second base.
That's the Royals lineup for you. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, he's not your typical cleanup hitter, but Maikel Garcia, definitely a very interesting option. He didn't play a lot in the minors, but since being called up, he's been up for 50 games and been very solid at the very least in just the speed department.
Yeah, I really liked that call. I tried to get him last week, missed out on him in a couple leagues, got him in a couple, but he's not just speed. He can, he's got a little bit of pop for, a sneaky pop for someone like, a middle infielder of his size. Very, very intriguing option. And I wasn't sure. I honestly was kind of surprised at how much he's been running, but it's great to see. And that's, I think, partially the Royals just kind of, they'll let anyone kind of steal bases and run, so it's take advantage of that when you can, and Maikel Garcia is and can definitely help you in stolen base category for your fantasy teams. And I will say just a long term play. We kind of talked about him earlier. Jaron Duran. He is not listed as a starter, and I know Adam Duvall and Kike Hernandez have been playing a lot in the outfield over him. But if those two guys who are both on 1-year deals are traded at the deadline, because the Red Sox are not exactly in the playoff race right now, they're a couple games, they're a little far back. I think they could end up being sellers, because this was always going to be a bridge year kind of for them. So if they move on from them and Duran gets full-time playing time, he could be kind of I don't want to say a league winner, because I don't know what else he's going to bring to the table, but I mean, he can definitely catapult you in the steals department in the second half of the year if he gets full-time playing time again.
Definitely. And he's only 15% rostered in Yahoo, so he is definitely available in a lot of leagues. We can look at the schedule now. We've got 15 teams with a full 7-game week right now. Baltimore, the Yankees, Cleveland, Kansas City, Houston, Seattle, Texas, Miami, Washington, the Cubs, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, and the Dodgers. And only 2 teams have 2 days off, and that's the Rockies and the Angels, both on different days of the week. And then every other team plays at least 6 games. Colorado, I think, is the only one that's sort of actionable here. They are on the road all week, playing in Houston and San Francisco, and they only play 5 days of the week. Oof. I would definitely be benching the majority of, or all of, my Colorado Rockies hitters. I doubt there's too many people with Colorado Rockies pitchers on their teams, but I don't think I'll be playing my Rockies guys this week, as not only will they be adjusting from losing the elevation, but they won't have that benefit there, and they're barely playing any games.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think outside, I mean, who even outside of maybe Ryan McMahon, yeah, you're probably sitting the rest of your Colorado Rockies next week.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we can move to our pitching recommendations. We'll start off with wins and Ks. I think this is pretty clear. You just want some good starters here on good teams that'll get you wins. Most starters that are good strike out a lot of guys. So yeah, we'll start with my guy, and I've got David Peterson. We talked about him earlier in the podcast as a guy that just recently got called up and had success in his return. He was really underperforming his underlying metrics. Like I said, ERA at 8 with a sub 3.5 xFIP. Right now, he's already brought his ERA down to 7 in that one start, and he's got a 3.42 xFIP. He's striking out 24% of batters, but I think that could go up a little given how unlucky he's been thus far this year. I think David Peterson is a guy that could be interesting this week. Let me double check who he's starting against this week. That's probably a good idea. He's taking on the Diamondbacks, so he's taking on the Giants on Sunday, and then he will get the next series there after the Diamondbacks. So that'll be definitely a factor to consider. But how are you feeling about David Peterson this week?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about him a little bit earlier. I am intrigued by the player. I think, as far as upside plays go, there's not a lot of options that roster rate that fit Peterson's mold with his strikeout upside. So I think, let's see, it looks like it might be at San Diego. I don't necessarily hate that.
No, their lineup is not too great, and it's sort of like lefty. They got a lot of righties, but I don't know. Maybe it's righty heavy. I was gonna say lefty.
Well, I mean, depending on Machado's status, but yeah, there's Tatis and Bogarts, but other than that, it's Soto, Cronenworth, Carpenter, Grisham.
It can be scary. It's a streaky lineup.
But at the same time, the Padres have been horrible lately, and I mean, Graham Ashcraft just destroyed them yesterday, and he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball up until last night. So I think that's a sneaky good call, especially 7% owned. Yeah, I mean, I know he hasn't been in the majors for a while, but it's a good call.
Thanks. Who do you have for wins and strikeouts this week?
So I'm kind of pivot. I'm going with a 2-star guy because I'll take my 2 chances to get a win, even though this guy pitches for the worst team in baseball, and that's JP Sears. But his first start's against Detroit, so I think that's definitely a winnable game, especially with I believe that's Screwball's first game back. So there could be a little bit of Still ill going on there with Subal. And then he's at Boston, which might scare some people away. But the Red Sox have definitely struggled against lefties lately. I think if you're gonna start someone against the Red Sox, you want him to be a lefty. So I think he might be able to, sneak kind of by that one and have a chance for a win. Especially with, let's see who the Red Sox, who do they have lined up against them? It'd be Bayo, who's been pitching better lately, but still, I don't hate him against the Red Sox. I think, the 2 starts give him a good strikeout upside and a chance of getting at least one win.
Yeah, good call. He's got a 3.67 ERA since the beginning of May, coming with 58 strikeouts and 61 innings. PLV absolutely loves him. He's the 11th best starter in terms of overall PLV, and his fastball grades out really well in PLV, and he only throws 93 miles per hour, so he's definitely doing something special there. Do you have any other suggestions in this department?
Well, he was really bad. I think there was a little bit of hype around Austin Cox going into his start this past week, and he did not look great. But as long as he gets another chance, I'm willing to I'll forgive that one. And he's only, rostered in 1% of leagues, so you can get him pretty much anywhere. And he does make 2 starts next week against Minnesota and Cleveland. Minnesota is striking out more than any other team in baseball right now. Cleveland's offense doesn't scare me, especially when you talk about Cox, who's 90% sure he's left-handed. No, I just double check that. I know we're getting real deep here. Yeah, he is left-handed. I just wanted to make sure before I said that. I was like, so yeah, I think the lefty's a good matchup against Cleveland's lineup. So, Austin Cox, very deep league option who is right now lined up to get to 2 starts next week.
Yeah, and he's just 1% owned, so there's very small chance that he's not available in your league. We can move to ratios. I liked your choices there more than mine, but I like my choice here for ratios more for ERA and WHIP. I've got Seth Lugo as my option this week. He's been really great recently. He was on the IL for a while, but prior to that, he was really good. And he's come back and he hasn't missed a beat. He has some pretty easy outings, but he's coming back. He's scheduled to start against the Angels, which can be a little bit scary considering they have Shohei Ohtani and obviously Mickey Moniak. But I don't think that really changes much for Seth Lugo. For the year, he's got a 3.59 ERA. Since he's returned from the IL, 3 starts, he's tossed 16 innings with a 2.25 ERA. So he's definitely figured it out. It's pretty crazy to see a guy that was such a solid reliever just transition seamlessly to the rotation. He's great at getting ground balls and not walking guys. And so while he's sort of Toby-esque with a 22% strikeout rate, I think definitely in 15 teamers, he should be owned probably universally. He's been very, very good this year. He's just 26% rostered.
Yeah, he was always kind of weird as a reliever because he throws 5 pitches and that you don't see that often from a reliever. So yeah, there was always talk of him transitioning to a starter, and so far it's working out. He looks like he belongs in the rotation. And they're gonna, the Padres team, we talked about them struggling. They're gonna need him to pitch well to kind of help them get to where they want to be. So yeah, big week for him. At the Angels are, again, that's kind of a hit or miss offense. I mean, if you can just work around Ohtani and Trout, you're in pretty good shape. So yeah, I don't mind that call at only 26% rostered right now. Yeah.
All right. Who do you got?
I went with a reliever.
Of course you did.
I had to. I felt like it. Lucas Sims, 7% rostered right now. The Reds, hottest team in baseball, the Reds, they play 7 games this week against Washington, and I think it's 4 against Washington and 3 against Milwaukee. Milwaukee's offense does not scare me at all right now. Obviously, Washington's off doesn't really scare anyone, so I think Sims is the next man up behind Diaz in that bullpen. Coming off a really strong June where he had a 1.93 ERA and a 0.71 WHIP with 19 strikeouts over 14 innings. So I think with the 7 games in play, if he pitches in 3 of them, you have a good chance for 6 to 7 strikeouts, maybe a vulture win, maybe a save if Diaz, if he needs a break, or but he's definitely he should help with ratios as well. So I think he could be a sneaky good play next week, given the matchups and the way the Reds have been playing lately.
Yeah, big strikeout pitcher here, 31% on the year. Big swinging strike guy who uses his slider over 50% of the time, and he's got a 92nd percentile CSW with that pitch, 39% there, and his fastball is pretty good as well, coming in at 94.5 miles per hour with a pretty solid swinging strike rate, over 11%. So definitely a guy that's going to get a lot of strikeouts, which with the possibility of grabbing at least one save if the Reds continue to win and Diaz sort of gets used a lot. But we'll sort of stay in that same range of relief pitchers and talk about the saves guys we'll be looking at this week. I'm going to let you go first here because this is a guy we've talked about all season, and it seems like it's finally coming together.
Yeah, we've been talking about him for a while. We talked about him earlier this week, but it's Hunter Harvey is finally the closer in Washington, and I think as of this past Tuesday, he has 2 saves since Wednesday night. So he's already, Kyle Finnegan hasn't had a save in forever. It's Harvey's job to lose, and he's still only rostered in 21% of Yahoo leagues. I think when we checked on Thursday for our In the Pen podcast, I think he was at like 9%. So it's going up. He's up to 21%, but I still feel like that number needs to be at least like 50% or so, if not more, because even though it's a bad team, he is a closer who does have some upside. There's some strikeout ability there. He's got a great fastball, and we talked about he just needs to find that secondary to get a little bit more out of him. But I think given the landscape of saves right now for someone rostered under 25%, I think he's the best option.
Definitely. Totally agree. He's been somebody that we've been waiting all year to take over that closer role. Big fastball guy, doesn't have a lot of secondaries, but that hasn't really mattered thus far. And the Nationals seem to be trusting him. And who knows? Maybe they'll grab reinforcements at the deadline.
Sure.
But,
Sean Doolittle coming back.
Yes. Cool. Great. I like him as a person.
Yes.
Good. But my recommendation here is going to be Justin Lawrence. Not my favorite option because he does pitch in Coors, but he is sort of the ideal guy to pitch in Coors. He throws a lot of sliders and he gets a lot of ground balls. And so 50th in baseball in terms of relievers, ground ball rate, 57% there. And his slider is very good. Not only 36% CSW, but it's 93rd percentile in terms of PLV. So it's one of the best sliders in baseball. And since Pierce Johnson was removed from that closer role, he's been getting all of the saves in Colorado. Pierce Johnson got the most recent one, but it should have been Justin Lawrence all year before that. He's got a 2.93 ERA and a nearly 25% strikeout rate. So if you're going to be trusting any reliever in Coors, this is the guy. And I mean, I think in a lot of 15-teamers, you sort of just need to get saves any way you can. And this is a guy that's going to be getting saves for sure.
Yeah. He's definitely my favorite reliever in Colorado. I just don't love the situation as a whole, but I think 20% rostered still low for someone who he's not Pierce Johnson. He's definitely better than Pierce Johnson. If you're going to pitch in Colorado, it feels like you either have to have really high ground ball rates or really high strikeout rates, and he definitely has the ground ball rates, and he does mix in some strikeout ability as well. So, I think he's been in the role for a while, so he's still getting slept on a little bit. I do like in deeper leagues. I mean, he makes sense as a 4th or 5th reliever option, or a third option, even if you're, desperate for saves. So yeah, that's a good call out. And there aren't a ton of committees there's not a ton of committees to kind of pick at right now, the way the closer landscape is. So
especially with low roster rates.
Yeah, it's exactly. The good committee guys are rostered at a pretty high rate already. So yeah, I think these two guys are good call outs for the week.
Yeah, so we'll wrap things up with our wild cards. I mean, these can sort of be whatever you want, but I think we're going for guys that are sort of underperforming, and we think a breakout could be coming in the second half. Rick, I'm going to let you go first again here.
Sure. So this is just kind of a gut feel, I guess, more than anything. But I do think that there's some sort of breakout coming for Spencer Torkelson. He's only rostered in 16% of leagues. He has really good hard hit metrics. I know Scott Chu is a fan of his, is also a Tigers fan, so that might play into it a little bit. But the rolling graphs are starting to look better. Since May, he has 9 home runs and 11% walk rate and a 111 WRC plus. So he's been above average. I think just, if he gets a little bit more batted ball luck kind of in his favor, there could be a breakout on the horizon for him. It's tough, and I think that team's tough to kind of, that team and that park, it's not the best, situation for a hitter to break out in, but there's still talent there. I think we don't want to forget on him, or forget about him too early, given his pedigree and what we've seen in the minors.
He's still only 23, former number 1 overall pick back in just 2020. And like you said, 9 home runs since May, 7 home runs in June alone. While the average wasn't really there, the power is there. And that's sort of something we've been waiting for from him after he only hit 8 home runs in his debut and started off the first couple of months of the season with just 4 home runs. So the power is starting to come. I think the rest of it's going to come. If you look at his StatCast metrics, underperforming his XBA by more than 30 points, underperforming his X-Slug by 60 points. He's got a barrel rate coming up on 12% and a 48% hard hit rate. So this is a guy that I think, the StatCast metrics and everything backs it up, and he's started to show the power. I think we just got to wait for that contact to come through, and then it's going to be a big second half.
Yeah, I think he feels really close to that big breakout, and I hope for him and for the Tigers' sake, I would love to see them have kind of a breakout offensive star, because they need one.
Yeah, especially with Riley Green coming back, it'll be nice to see those two working together. We can go with my option now, and it's definitely one that's probably not going to interest most people, but I think there's something there, and that's Adam Frazier. He's rostered in just 15% of Yahoo leagues. Right now, 93 WRC plus, he's batting 229, but there's a lot of things to like about his profile right now. Not only is he posting the best plate discipline metrics of his career, which he was already pretty good at not striking out and walking at like a league average rate. But right now, 8.8% walk rate, 11.7% strikeout rate. It's good for a 0.75 walk to strikeout ratio. That's one of the best in baseball. And that comes with some pretty interesting underlying metrics, including just the fact that he's underperforming basically everything right now. His BABIP is at 229, matching his batting average. So that's definitely going to rise up as his career is at a 297 mark. So the average is likely to raise at least, 20 points or so. His expected batting average is at 280. So that's a 51 point difference there. Thanks. And he's already got 9 home runs on the year. His career high is 10. So the power is there, not super big, but definitely more so than it's ever been. And he's already thrown in 7 stolen bases, just 4 shy of his career high. So he's sort of having a career best year despite the underperformance in the BABIP department and the expected average department. So I think that's going to start turning around for him. And if he can maintain the gains that he's had in the power and speed departments, this is a guy that could finish the season like 15-15 with a batting average above 250. So, I mean, for the rest of the year, I don't know what you'd have to bat to raise your batting average 20 to 30 points, but I think he's going to have a big second half, especially for a team that is just going to keep getting influxes of talent on that team as long as he maintains the role at the keystone position there in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting deep league option, especially we're talking about another strong side platoon option and they called up Westberg, and that doesn't seem to affect his playing time all that much. And who else is going to get called? Cowser is an outfielder. He's not going to play. He shouldn't affect. Mayo,
maybe, I don't know.
Mayo's been red hot lately. Maybe he gets a call later. But other than that, I don't think. And even still, that might still just be a platoon situation. So I think he's pretty safe in this lineup. That again, they keep adding pieces. They're going to get stronger and better. And Frazier can do a little bit of everything while not, the average is definitely lower than I expected. That should get better, and he doesn't strike out. He doesn't swing and miss. So that alone should help his, batting average rise. So, and this is a guy who was a former All-Star not too long ago. I'm not saying he's going to get back to that level, but he's not as bad as his 226 average right now shows.
Yeah. So just to recap our recommendations: for power, we've got Max Kepler and Carlos Santana. For speed, we've got Maikel Garcia and Will Benson. In terms of the scheduling, sit your Rockies players. They've got 5 games and they're all on the road. For wins and Ks, go for David Peterson, JP Sears, and Austin Cox. For ratios, go for Seth Lugo and Lucas Sims. For saves, go grab Justin Lawrence and Hunter Harvey. And our wild card guys that we think are going to have huge second halves, Adam Frazier and Spencer Torkelson. Rick, do you have any final thoughts before we send the listeners home?
I don't right now. I think that covered pretty much everything. It was fun being able to talk about something other than relievers for once. Yeah. It was nice to put my hitter hat on and try to figure out what hitters to roster. So yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything here.
Yeah, is your hitter hat a batting helmet?
It should be, yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, you can catch both of us over on In the Pen. We put out an episode every Friday. We talk about bullpens in many different ways, always talking about the risers and fallers and the news and notes. So if you're looking for saves or holds or, ratio producers, then that's the place to go. Listen to us. But that's going to wrap up this episode number 121 of On the Wire. You can follow myself on Twitter at Jake Crumpler, and you can follow Rick at I am Rick Graham. And of course, follow the pod itself on Twitter at On the Wire Pod. I'd like to once again thank Adam for trusting us with this edition of the podcast. It was a lot of fun. You can follow Adam at 80 grade on Twitter. That's all spelled out. But after all that, I'm Jake Crumpler, and on behalf of Rick and Adam, thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.